how would you get a new person into a game? Somebody who's not played before, but you feel like they'd have a lot of fun. They seem a little standoffish from it, a little intimidated. I ask and I pester.
You ask and you pester.
I ask and I pester. That's how I do it. And it may not be the best way to go about doing that. Do you have any sort of technique that you do? Is there, do you show them, say, oh, it's like this episode of this, or...
I always use the classic, just compare it to, like, if the person is into acting or improv or fantasy, look at what they're interested in. And if there are elements of that you can say, hey, in this game, this is what we do, and that piques their interest, great. If you say that and they're like, yes, but that sounds really embarrassing, and I don't think I would have a good time, say, hey, if you don't want to play, I absolutely won't force you. I'm not going to force you to do it. If you like to check it out sometime, though, maybe you just want to watch, you're more than welcome to. I think one of the tricks is to be open and welcoming and to also accept any boundaries they throw up, saying, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't want to try that. Don't push that. Say, all right, well, what do you want to try? What would you be willing to? Because I want to invite you to my hobby, I think is the premise here in this scenario. And in order to invite you to that, I want to present it in a way that doesn't sound intimidating. And Dungeons & Dragons and any role-playing game is hugely intimidating as a hobby. When I go to play a new game, if you invite me over and said, have you ever played chess? I'm like, I've heard of it, but I've never played it. All right, well, here's a pamphlet. It's about 9 pages long that tells you how the pieces move. You can keep that pamphlet by you in case you forget, and we're going to play. Well, I'll just go easy on you the first game until you get the idea of how the pieces move, and then after that, we'll start actually saying, all right, I won, who won, track points. Okay, well, that pamphlet is only 9 pages long, and it seems complex until you go play Dungeons & Dragons, and then I say, these are the core rule books, and put 3 textbooks on the table. Now, we're actually going to play this game, and I pull another textbook out, and then I pull out the matching Dungeon Master screen so that you can't see any of the books anymore except the ones I let you see. And then on top of that, here are the dice. Oh, okay, I know what dice are. Well, you think you do, but there's this one that looks like a golf ball, and then there's, what are these? These shapes are weird. It's a very intimidating game. So when you're bringing in new people, accept any boundaries they put up. Don't push too hard. And when they seem confused or lost, slow down and just say, I know it looks like a lot. Believe me, it's not near as bad as it seems. And if you think that you don't understand all of it, neither do I. Neither does that guy. Neither does that lady. None of us do. Nobody has memorized all of it. There are people that have written the books that will go online on Twitter and whatnot, or X, whatever it's called now, and say, I think the rule is this. Edit. The rule is this. Because they had to go look it up.
I honestly think, in order to introduce new people to it, I would rather it be started off really light, where the system is really simple to use. Because with how extensive the rules tend to be, how you have to memorize stats and everything else, that's also where pre-generated characters definitely help. But I definitely think there needs to be a D&D light system that acts as a good introductory system for new players.
So I have a thought on this. Howard has made some really good attempts at such a thing, but there used to be a basic D&D and an advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So they did do that at one point. The thing is that they split their player base then, and they split the amount of money they could get. And certain books just weren't selling as much, and making one core book puts everybody in the same, that book will now make more money than if you split it between 2 differences. There's a whole thing around this. There's a lot of marketing. Howard has made an interesting system. You basically put down words on your character sheet that describe your character, and then you mark those from 1 to 10, 10 being the most important and 1 being the least. Would you like to talk about this for a little bit? I have one complaint, only one problem with this game, but it's not a big one. I really thought it was an interesting thing. Go ahead, talk about it. Tell us about it.
Literally, that is the most rules-like game that I could come up with, and that was exactly what Matt was saying, was you have to find a way to just take out all the extra rules. And so I was like, just when you describe a character, what are the 10 things that stand out about this character to you? And then, like, you're making a fantasy dwarf, let's say Gimli from Lord of the Rings. All right, well, he's a gruff little man with an axe. He has an extensive, connection to his dwarven culture. And what else do we know about Gimli? He's a loyal friend. I don't know. You can throw in whatever you want. You could say he loves to eat meat. Whatever you want to say. There's 10 things that stand out about him to you. You could say he wears an awesome suit of armor. Whatever you can think of. You write down those 10 things, and those are the things that matter the most upon character creation. And then later on, there were ways to get additional sentences added to your character sheet as your character would grow, or to raise the ranking of the items that you already had. And then you would just roll based on the item that you already had. So if you're in a fight and you want to use that axe, you would roll your axe, wields an axe, roll it, yeah, has armor, roll it to not take damage. If it was in a social situation, you're like, well, I'm going to try and make the guy back off. And it says right here that I have a gruff personality. I'm going to roll that, and you had ranked them 1 to 10. So we knew kind of where it stood on the character and how important it was. And if it's not all important to you that I mentioned he liked to eat meat, that might have been the one thing. But, if it came up and you found a way to work it into conversation, you could still roll it. And that was the idea was just to make a quick character, have a good feel for him, and just start playing and see what happens. Because ultimately, we're all just sitting around telling stories, and all the dice are is just something to decide the arbitrary stuff. Because when I say, I shot you, and you say, no, you didn't, we need something that can impartially decide yes or no if you did. And that's really the whole core to game design, is just what is the arbitrary thing and how is it decided, and then move forward from there. And then the rest of the game system is describing your character and what they can do.
Would you like to know my one, I think the one thing I thought that was a problem in that game?
Sure.
Because I'm an opinionated negative Nancy, and
I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember how most of it worked. I'd have to go and find it.
The fact that you could write down anything,
I see where you're going.
Made choice paralysis, and if I have no context on what's important, then I have no idea what I should write down in the first place. And just having a list, even if it's not a comprehensive list of things you could write down, would have been. I see really your great.
Issue. I totally get it, and that's a very fair criticism. I thought you were going to go in the other direction, in that it's super easy to put a general thing down on your 10 item list that can apply to most situations. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I would have put somewhere in the rules, the game master, narrator, whatever, should approve or disapprove things if they are too general. But as far as what you're saying, absolutely, that can be a choice paralysis issue. And I think the way to work that is to tell the person, well, let's start with a concept. And like in the case where I just chose Gimli from Lord of the Rings, what is the first thing that stands out at you from him? And of course, thanks to the memes, we all know it's "and my axe." And then we're going to go from there.
People like lists, man. Let me tell you something. I don't,
but I see why they do.
I love running Numenera. And Numenera does not have a skill list. You get skills. There's no skill list. You just write down what you want to be good at, and then that is your skill. And every time it's time for them to pick a new skill, my players will look at me blankly and not understand what they're like. What is a skill? Do you have a skill list? Can I just look at a list? Just give me a list. I want to look at a... I'm like, there's no list. I'm sorry. And they hate it. They hate that.